The evening was quiet, almost too quiet. The soft hum of the city outside my window contrasted sharply with the storm brewing inside my house. I had always believed family was sacred, untouchable, but that illusion shattered the moment my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and delivered the words no parent ever wants to hear. "You'll never see your grandchildren again," she said, her voice sharp, venomous, almost rehearsed. I froze. My chest tightened. My heart raced, but somewhere deep inside a calm voice whispered, "You're stronger than they think." I took a slow breath, letting the silence hang like a blade between us. Then, with a smile colder than winter steel, I replied, "Then you'll never see my money." Her face went pale, her words faltering. The tension in the room thickened, almost suffocating. My son, who had been standing silently beside her, looked shocked, not at her threat, but at the fire in my eyes. For the first time, he saw that I wasn't a passive, retired man to be controlled or intimidated. I knew my words weren't just a retort. They were the opening move in a game nobody expected me to play. Over the years, I had built a life of success, wealth, and influence. But all of that meant nothing if my own family could betray me so easily. The thought of never seeing my grandchildren again ignited a fury I hadn't felt in decades. I decided it was time to act, not with rage, not with shouting, but with calculated precision. I had spent years observing, learning, and preparing for moments like this. If my son and his wife wanted a battle of control, I would give them one, but on my terms. The first step was understanding their motivations. Money, power, and pride had always been their driving forces. Their world was ruled by selfishness, and they assumed that because I was older, I was weak. They underestimated me. That was their first mistake. As the night unfolded, I noticed subtle things I had ignored before. The way my son avoided eye contact, the slight tremble in his wife's hand when she spoke about the grandchildren, the careful way she hid her phone from me. All these little details painted a clear picture. They were scared. They just didn't realize it yet. The real shock came when I checked my bank accounts later that evening. Hidden, untouched funds reserved for emergencies like this, were at my disposal. I had a plan forming in my mind, intricate and unrelenting. If they wanted to play games, I would rewrite the rules. I called my lawyer, someone I trusted implicitly, and gave him specific instructions. Nothing illegal, nothing reckless, but every move would be precise. Every asset, every document, every account could be leveraged to remind my son and his wife who really held the power in our family. And yet, the thought that chilled me the most wasn't money. It was the possibility that this family, the one I had loved and nurtured, might never forgive me for using my own strength to protect what mattered most, my grandchildren and my dignity. That night, I sat by the fireplace, staring at old photographs of the children. Their innocent faces, unaware of the looming family conflict, tugged at my heart. I promised myself silently that they would never be hurt, not by my anger, not by greed, and certainly not by betrayal. Tomorrow, the real strategy would begin. I would confront them with facts, documents, and actions that would leave no room for doubt. I was not weak. I was not a victim. And anyone trying to manipulate or intimidate me would soon learn that crossing a parent and grandparent who had built an empire came with consequences they could never imagine. The clock ticked past midnight. Outside, the world slept. Inside, I was awake, plotting, anticipating, and preparing for a confrontation that would change our family forever. And deep down, I smiled, because the first move had already been made. The message was clear. Underestimate me, and you will regret it. Morning light spilled through the curtains, but I felt no warmth. Today wasn't about coffee, newspapers, or idle mornings. It was about reclaiming respect, authority, and family integrity. My son had crossed the line, and his wife had drawn the first blood with her threats. I had to respond, carefully, deliberately, and in a way they would never see coming. I called my lawyer first thing. "Arthur, I need you to prepare everything, the assets, the accounts, the legal documents. We're going to show them exactly who holds the cards in this family." Arthur's voice, calm and methodical as always, replied, "Understood. But are you sure about this, Robert? It's your son." I paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. My son, or the boy I thought I knew, had betrayed me. And now the protection of my grandchildren and the dignity I had earned over decades depended on decisive action. "Arthur," I said firmly, "this isn't about anger. This is about principle. They need to learn that disrespect has consequences." By mid-morning, I had arranged a meeting at my house. My son arrived, looking casual, confident, perhaps expecting me to apologize for my earlier retort. He didn't know the storm waiting for him. His wife lingered behind him, arms crossed, face stern, trying to radiate control, but I could see the tremor in her hands. "Dad," my son began, a hint of unease in his voice. "About last night—" I raised a hand, stopping him. "Sit, both of you. We're going to have a conversation, and I suggest you listen carefully." They obeyed, exchanging glances that betrayed their tension. "You threatened me, with my grandchildren. Do you know what that makes you?" "We just want what's best," his wife interjected, her voice shaking slightly. "For yourself, yes," I replied, eyes narrowing. "Not for them, not for family. You've mistaken fear for respect." I presented documents, accounts, and detailed proofs of my assets. Each sheet I laid down, each number I mentioned, chipped away at their composure. I could see their bravado cracking, the illusion of power they had clung to for years starting to crumble. "You see," I said, my voice steady, "your threats mean nothing if I act, and I will act, not out of vengeance, but to protect what's mine and what's theirs." The room felt smaller, tighter. The walls seemed to echo with my words. Every glance, every pause, every bead of sweat on my daughter-in-law's temple spoke louder than words ever could. "And if you try to manipulate this family again, there are legal steps, guardianships, and protections I will implement. I will not be intimidated." By noon, tension had escalated into a psychological battlefield. My son attempted reasoning, trying to charm, to plead, to negotiate. I remained unmoved. His wife attempted to guilt me, to frame me as the villain. But I was prepared for every tactic, every lie, every emotional ploy. And then came the final blow. The envelope that she had hidden under her arm, the one she thought I wouldn't notice. I took it slowly, deliberately. Inside were documents that revealed financial maneuvers designed to cut me out completely. Plans to siphon my assets before my grandchildren could ever see a dime. Her face went pale as I held the papers up. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" I asked softly. Silence filled the room. Fear, confusion, and shock replaced the arrogance I had grown accustomed to. "This ends today." And in that moment, I knew the balance of power had shifted. My son and his wife would never underestimate me, and the path to protecting my family had only just begun.
The house felt colder than ever. Even though the sun shone brightly outside,
The air inside was thick with tension. I paced slowly, letting my thoughts gather like storm clouds. My son and his wife sat rigidly on the couch, each pretending calm, but the unease was visible in every twitch, every nervous glance. They had underestimated me, but more importantly, they had underestimated what I was willing to do to protect my family. I pulled out my phone and dialed an old friend, someone who had been through similar family battles. The line connected, and his deep, reassuring voice gave me the courage I needed. "It's time they learn the truth. Don't hold back," he said. And I knew he was right. I reached for the envelope again, the one my daughter-in-law had tried to hide. I carefully spread out the documents across the table, letting the sunlight highlight the deception etched in black and white. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, forged signatures, and manipulated wills. She had thought she was clever. She had thought I would be oblivious. "You thought I wouldn't see this?" I said, my voice calm but cutting like a knife. "Every move you made was in plain sight. You tried to erase me, to erase my legacy, to erase the future of my grandchildren. But I am here, and I see everything." Her face went pale. My son's confident demeanor wavered. Suddenly, the power dynamics in the room had shifted, and they both knew it. "Dad, my son began. "Save it," I interrupted. "I want the truth. No lies. Every last detail." They hesitated. My daughter-in-law opened her mouth, then closed it, finally sighing in defeat. We thought you wouldn't notice," she admitted, voice trembling. "We thought you were finished, that you were weak, that you'd just step aside." "Step aside?" I echoed, incredulous. "Do you think I spent decades building this life to step aside for manipulation and greed?" The room went silent. Every tick of the clock was deafening. Then my son finally spoke, his voice cracking. We just wanted to secure our future for the kids." "And in doing so, you risked destroying them too," I said firmly. "Do you understand that? The moment you tried to take control of my assets and cut me out, you put everything, their inheritance, their well-being, at risk." I leaned forward. "And now you will face the consequences, not vengeance, but justice." By afternoon, I had made my decision. I would not only confront them, but I would also take steps to secure every asset, every account, every legal protection for my grandchildren. I would leave nothing to chance. I called my lawyer, Arthur, who arrived within the hour. Together, we began drafting guardianship plans, legal claims, and asset safeguards. My son's wife tried to intervene, panic flashing in her eyes, but I remained calm. "No more excuses, no more lies. You pushed me too far. Now you will see the result of your actions." For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control, a sense of power, not over them, but over my life, my family, and the legacy that had been under threat. And as the sun set outside, casting long shadows through the living room, I realized something. This battle was far from over. But the first moves had been made, and the first blows had landed. The game was on, and I was ready to win.
The next morning, the tension in the house was palpable. The air was thick, almost suffocating with unspoken words and simmering resentment. My son avoided my gaze while his wife busied herself with meaningless tasks, each clink of cutlery or shuffle of papers echoing like a drumbeat of guilt. I sat at the head of the dining table, sipping my coffee slowly, savoring the calm before the storm. "You think you can intimidate me," I said finally, breaking the silence, "but you have no idea who you're dealing with." The words hung in the room, heavy and sharp. My son's jaw tightened. I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes, a frantic calculation of his next move. His wife's eyes darted nervously from him to me, searching for some signal, some escape. But there was none. I reached for the stack of documents I had gathered yesterday, proof of their secret dealings, all neatly arranged and categorized. The moment my son saw them, his confident mask cracked. How did you get these?" he stammered, voice trembling. "I've always had my ways," I replied calmly, leaning back. "And every time you thought you were clever, you left traces. You left evidence. You left me a trail to follow." He tried to snatch the papers, but I held him away. His wife moved instinctively to intervene, and that's when I noticed the fear in her eyes, the same fear that had appeared the day I uncovered the first secret. "You really didn't think I'd sit quietly and watch you dismantle my life, did you?" The tension escalated further when I stood, pacing slowly, letting each word land like a hammer of guilt. "This isn't just about money. This is about respect, trust, and the legacy you're destroying. And mark my words, the moment you underestimate me again, you will regret it." Suddenly my son blurted out, "Fine, you want the truth? Here it is. We thought you were weak. We thought you'd crumble without Mom." His voice cracked, desperation leaking through. "Weak?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Do you even hear yourself? You thought I'd be destroyed by your manipulation? Let me remind you something. I built this life. I raised you. I am not weak. And every move you make to destroy me only proves how small-minded you truly are." His wife tried to speak, but I silenced her with a single look. "Save your excuses. Every action has consequences, and you're about to learn yours." I called my lawyer on speakerphone, letting the line hum in the background. Arthur's calm voice immediately filled the room. "We've prepared documents to transfer all guardianship and asset protection measures for the children, effective immediately." My son's eyes widened. His wife's hand trembled as she clutched her phone, dialing frantic numbers behind her back. But I ignored them both, letting the storm build naturally, letting them feel the weight of their own mistakes. By evening, the confrontation reached a boiling point. I had presented evidence to Arthur and began executing protective measures for my grandchildren's assets. Every legal safeguard was in place, and the realization finally hit my son and his wife. I was untouchable, and they had underestimated me at their peril. "You think this ends here?" my son hissed, frustration and panic mixing in his tone. "No," I replied, "it's just beginning. You wanted control, you wanted to erase me, but I am not gone, and from this moment on, every step you take will be under my watchful eye." As they sank into the couch, defeated and pale, I realized the power had shifted. The house no longer felt like their domain, it was mine. I had taken back not just control of the finances, but control of the story, the legacy, and the future. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet satisfaction settled over me. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about setting the record straight, about protecting what mattered, and ensuring that no one, not even my own son, could ever threaten that again.
The next morning, I awoke to the quiet hum of the house, a deceptive calm that only heightened my sense of anticipation. I knew the storm from yesterday hadn't ended. It had merely shifted underground, like magma simmering beneath the surface. I walked down the grand staircase, each step echoing through the silent halls, and caught sight of my son's wife glancing furtively at me from the corner of the living room. Her phone was clutched like a lifeline. I could see the worry etched into her face, the panic barely contained beneath the veneer of composure she tried to maintain. "You think you've won," I said softly, my voice carrying more steel than warmth, "but you've barely scratched the surface." She froze, a flicker of recognition crossing her eyes, a silent admission that she understood what was coming. And then my son appeared,
his posture rigid, his expression a carefully measured mask of anger and fear. "Dad," he began, voice low, attempting authority. "You can't just take control like this. You—" "Take control?" I interrupted, my tone calm but deadly. "Let me remind you, you handed me the keys to this house, the proof of your lies, and every opportunity to act. You created this battlefield, and now you're surprised I'm here to fight?" I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder of documents, contracts, and bank statements that exposed every manipulation, every secret transaction, every attempt to undermine me. I spread them across the dining table, deliberately, letting my son's eyes widen with horror. "I hope you're paying attention," I said, letting each word settle like a weight in the room. "Everything you thought was hidden is now visible. And every choice you made to betray me, I've already countered." His wife's hand trembled as she touched one of the papers, her face pale. You can't do this," she whispered. "Watch me," I replied, "because this isn't about revenge. It's about survival and protecting what's mine. And that includes your children." The confrontation escalated as I began detailing the legal measures I had implemented overnight. Guardianship arrangements, asset protections, trust funds, they were all locked, controlled, and beyond their reach. My son's carefully laid plans to assert dominance over my life and the grandchildren were collapsing in real time. "You think money is everything?" I asked, locking eyes with him. "It's not. Respect, family, loyalty, these are the currencies you've squandered. And now, I'm reclaiming them." He slumped into a chair, the color drained from his face. His wife sank beside him, both of them trapped in the weight of their own miscalculations. I could feel the shift, the absolute reversal of power. I wasn't the one on the defensive anymore. I was the one holding all the cards. By late afternoon, the reality hit them fully. Their betrayal had not only failed, but it had empowered me in ways they couldn't anticipate. Every plan they had made to manipulate, intimidate, or humiliate me had backfired spectacularly. "This isn't over," my son said finally, a bitter edge in his voice. "You can't just—" "I can. And I will. From this moment on, you will learn what it means to lose control over someone you thought was powerless. And if you ever try to manipulate me again, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." As I left the room, the tension thick behind me, I knew the balance had shifted permanently. The house was mine, the legacy secure, and the betrayal exposed for everyone to see. The satisfaction wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, protection, and finally asserting the respect I had always deserved. The following morning, the house felt strangely quiet, almost anticipatory, as though it too knew the next move in this family war. I moved through the grand halls with a sense of purpose, the documents from yesterday still burning in my mind. Every betrayal, every sly comment, every smirk from my son and his wife replayed in vivid detail. But this time, I wasn't helpless. I was armed with evidence, strategy, and the law firmly on my side. As I reached the kitchen, I was surprised to see my daughter, Emily, sipping coffee by the window. She had been distant lately, caught in the whirlwind of her own life, but today, her gaze held something I hadn't seen before, understanding and a hint of rebellion. "Emily," I said, lowering my voice, "I need your help. This
Everything that's happening, it's bigger than just me, bigger than just them. She looked at me, the familiar warmth of family finally breaking through. Dad, I know. I've seen how they've treated you. I've wanted to act, but I wasn't sure how. Now you know, I said, setting a hand on her shoulder. We need to protect not just me, but our family. And yes, that includes them realizing that betrayal has consequences. We devised a plan. It wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity and exposure. I wanted my son and his wife to face the consequences of their choices without harming the grandchildren or innocent family members. Emily was a quick learner, and together, we crafted a series of measures: legal notifications, subtle public exposure, and private confrontations that would make it impossible for their deceit to continue unnoticed. I could see the panic returning in my son's eyes when he realized the extent of our knowledge. Every sneaky transfer of funds, every hidden property, every attempt to isolate me, they were all on the table. The look of fear was deliciously satisfying, but only the prelude to what would come. "You think this is just about money," I said aloud, pacing in the living room. "It's about respect, loyalty, and family. And you're about to learn that lesson the hard way." Later that day, Emily and I confronted the family lawyers. I had already drafted legal papers to reclaim authority over key assets and enforce transparency in the family finances. My son's wife tried to argue, claiming my actions were extreme, but the lawyers, fully aware of the documented evidence, sided firmly with me. "Your time of hiding behind deceit is over," I told them. "Every misstep, every lie, every betrayal, it's all coming to light, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." I watched their faces, pale and shocked, and realized the balance had truly shifted. They had underestimated me, assumed my age or physical absence would make me passive. But they were wrong. Every secret they thought was buried had been uncovered, and the truth was an unstoppable force. That evening, my son tried one last desperate maneuver. He called a private meeting, attempting to negotiate, manipulate, and threaten. But I wasn't intimidated. Emily's presence made him hesitate. Her sharp questions and piercing gaze revealed she knew everything. "You cannot intimidate us," I said calmly. "We are prepared. Every action you've taken to hurt me or mislead the family has consequences. Today, those consequences begin." As they left, defeated and shaken, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. Years of betrayal, manipulation, and emotional pain were being countered not with anger but with strategy and clarity. I had my daughter by my side, the law in my corner, and the truth finally on display. I sat by the window, watching the sunset cast golden light across the property. For the first time in years, I felt hope, not fear. And in that hope, I knew the coming days would cement the ultimate justice. Justice not born of revenge, but of rightful reclamation.
The invitation came from my son, a family dinner. At first, I thought it was a trick, another manipulative ploy to corner me emotionally, but Emily convinced me to go. "Dad," she said, "sometimes the most powerful way to confront lies is face to face, on their stage, not ours." So I agreed. The dining room that evening was staged like a performance: expensive wine, polished silverware, chandeliers glittering like jewels. My son and his wife looked like they were hosting royalty, not the very man they had tried to cast aside. "Dad," my son began with a strained smile, "we thought it was time to bury the hatchet." But his eyes betrayed him. Behind the forced kindness was fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of losing everything he thought he had secured. I let them speak first. They circled around pleasantries, tried to make small talk, and pretended as though the months of betrayal hadn't happened. But when the wine was poured and the food was served, I leaned forward. "Enough," I said, my voice sharp. "This isn't a dinner. This is a performance, and I'm done playing the fool." Emily, seated beside me, slid a folder across the table. It landed in front of my son's wife with a thud. She frowned, confused, and opened it, only to freeze. Inside were copies of financial transfers, secret property documents, and even text messages she thought were deleted. How did you get this?" she whispered, her face draining of color. "You should have known better," Emily said coldly. "You can't bury the truth forever." My son slammed his fist on the table, anger replacing his fear. "You had no right," he shouted. "This is still my family, my life." "Your family?" I cut in sharply. "Do you even understand what that word means? A family is built on trust, respect, and love, not lies, not greed, and certainly not betrayal." The room fell silent. Even the clinking of silverware stopped. His wife tried to recover, her voice trembling. "We can fix this, can't we? Maybe if we—" I leaned back, shaking my head slowly. "No. The time for keeping things quiet is over. Actions have consequences, and tonight you're seeing the start of them." My words weren't loud, but they carried a weight that silenced everyone in the room. Emily stood, her voice clear and unwavering. "You tried to erase my father. You tried to silence him, humiliate him, and take everything he built. But he's still here, stronger than ever. And now the truth will follow you." My son's face was pale, his hands trembling. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His wife's fork slipped from her hand, clattering against the porcelain plate. And that's when I delivered the final blow. "Tomorrow morning," I said, locking eyes with them both, "the lawyers file everything. Every misstep, every theft, every betrayal. It all goes public. This dinner, it's not a reconciliation. It's your last supper before the storm." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner sounded like a drumbeat, counting down the seconds to their inevitable downfall. I pushed my chair back and stood, Emily beside me. Together, we walked out of that house, leaving them frozen at the table. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.
The next morning, I woke up with a strange calmness. The storm had already begun. While sipping my coffee, the phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, emails, even missed calls from my son. But I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted him to feel what I had felt for months. Silence, isolation, fear of the unknown. By noon, the lawyers had filed everything. Bank accounts frozen, properties investigated, every secret deal dragged into the light. For once, I wasn't the one blindsided. Around 2 p.m., there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I found my son standing there. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and his eyes swollen from lack of sleep. For the first time, he didn't look powerful. He didn't look confident. He looked broken. "Dad, please," he said, his voice cracking. "Don't do this. I'll lose everything." I studied him carefully. For years, he had seen me as weak, disposable, unimportant. Now, the tables are turned. "You already lost everything," I replied quietly. "The moment you betrayed me, you threw it all away." His mouth opened, but no words came out. He lowered his head like a child being scolded. Later that night, I sat with Emily on the porch. The city lights glittered in the distance, but I couldn't stop thinking about my son. Emily squeezed my hand.
You did the right thing, Dad. Sometimes the hardest thing is letting people face the consequences of their choices. But deep down, it still hurt. Because no matter what he had done, he was still my son. Just as I was about to speak, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't my son, it was his wife. The message was short, sharp, and venomous. You've ruined us. I'll make sure you regret this. I showed Emily the screen. She frowned. Dad, people like her only know how to threaten. Don't give her power by reacting. Still, the message lingered in my mind. The following week, everything changed. My son's name appeared in the news, headlines exposing the shady transfers and hidden deals. His wife's smug reputation crumbled overnight. Their friends, gone. Their allies, silent. They had built their empire on lies, and now it was turning to dust. And me? For the first time, people saw me not as a weak old man, but as the one who stood tall against betrayal. One evening, Emily asked softly, "Do you regret it?" I thought about it. The tears, the anger, the shattered family ties. Nah, I said finally, because this wasn't about revenge. This was about respect, about reminding them and myself that no one erases me, not anymore. Emily smiled, her eyes shimmering. Then you've already won. And that's when I realized, sometimes the greatest justice isn't punishing those who betrayed you. It's reclaiming the power they thought you had lost. Because they tried to write me out of the story, but I was the one holding the pen all along.